America is at a breaking point. Right now, we're living through the most crucial political era of our lifetime, where everything that has made this country a global powerhouse is now on the line, where everything that has made it a democracy is on the line. Misinformation is rampant, division is deepening, and the fight for our rights is no longer just political theater. It's a real battle for the power to shape America's future. Today, I believe that the greatest threat to America isn't coming from abroad. It's the hatred that we've learned to have for each other. That anxiety that you feel right now, even the fear that you have when you wake up checking the news first thing in the morning, checking social media, is because Americans are in the midst of a political war with each other. A war that has turned friends into foes, placing potential enemies on our northern and southern borders. And every day, it feels like we're one election, one conversation, one issue away from tearing ourselves apart in the quest for more power. I'm Hendrell Remus, and this is the very first episode of Politics Unfiltered. If you're a proud Democrat representing the left, maybe sometimes you feel like the party isn't doing enough. Conversely, if you're a conservative Republican on the right, maybe sometimes you wonder if things maybe have gone too far. And if you're in the center, I guess my question to you is, are you doing enough to get both sides to the table? Whatever the case, if you're listening to this podcast, first, I want to thank you for tuning in for my very first episode. It means the world to me. I hope you keep tuning in. But I want to be straight with you. I started this podcast because I'm tired of the political spin. I'm tired of the endless hot takes. I'm tired of the sugar-coated narratives. And if you found yourself feeling the same way, you're in the right place. You're listening to the right podcast. It's time to cut through the noise, ditch the political correctness, and break down what's really happening in politics and in this country, with no fluff and no filter, just raw politics. I can tell you from experience that the American people are indeed tired of sitting through political science class over and over and over again. We're getting too many lessons and definitely not enough liberty. Too many lessons and not enough liberty. That's the case. Look, I've been inside the machine. I was the first black chairman of the Tennessee Democratic Party. I've seen how the game is played. And let me tell you, the system isn't broken by accident. It's working exactly the way those in power want it to. So as we start this journey, I could sit here and tell you this is all just a Republican problem. But indeed, that'd be a lie. Both parties have made mistakes. Both parties have failed the American people at different points. But here's a hard truth. One party is actively dismantling democracy, rigging the economy for billionaires, and turning people against each other to maintain power. And then there's the other party, the one with good intentions, but too often it's been too weak, too cautious, or too unwilling to take the fight to the other side. Now, only you can decide which party fits which of those categories for you. I know how I feel. I know which team I'm on. I know which team I'm rocking with. But the question is, do you? Do you know where your politics are every single day? Here's the one commitment that I'll make as we kick off this show. I'm going to try my hardest not to make this podcast just about left versus right, but instead it's going to be about the people versus the powerful. It's going to be informative and based on facts. But most importantly, it's going to be about reclaiming our voice in politics, in government, and in our future. And in this process, we'll have some really cool guests who will drop in and join us from time to time, local folks and national folks. But for today, let's jump into it. Today, we're talking about what's broken, why it's broken, and if it can be fixed. But in order to have this conversation, we have to realize that most of the problems that we face aren't new. The players on the board, they get shuffled around. They go from Congress to the Senate, maybe to a governor's office, maybe even become a mayor someday or came from being a mayor. But the problems, we can argue, have been for the most part the exact same for at least the last 65 or 70 years, if not longer in some cases. Let's be real for a moment. If you pulled up a clip from the 1980s and compared it to today, you'd hear the same things. I mean, almost identical. We need good paying jobs. We need affordable health care. We need to fix our schools and yada, 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 yada. Here we are, all these years later, and we're still waiting. Think about this timeline for a moment. When it comes to jobs in the economy, every president talks about bringing back jobs and growing the middle class. But workers today are making barely more than they did 40 years ago. That's when you adjust it for this crazy ass inflation that we are experiencing. While CEO pay, it continues to go through the roof. It's not slowing down. It continues to go through the roof. When it comes to healthcare, since Harry Truman, think about that. Since Truman took over after FDR died in 1945, presidents have promised affordable health care. And let me be clear, yes, before you start jumping about, yes, we've made progress. Only because Democrats gave us Medicare, Medicaid, CHIP, and Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, whatever you call it. But yet, millions of people across the country still can't afford to get sick, still can't afford to pay for the prescriptions that are higher than they are in other countries. While right now, I mean literally right now at this moment, the president and Republicans are scheming and trying to weave together a big, beautiful bill, a budget that will possibly cut Medicare and Medicaid and take away coverage from millions of people. Think about that. They're ready to take health care coverage away from millions of people right now when it's already unaffordable. And even education. How many times have you heard politicians say, our children are our future, yet student debt is out of control and schools in low-income and middle-class neighborhoods, they are literally falling apart, deferred maintenance through the roof, while teachers are working 3 jobs just to survive. Some teachers are teaching students in the morning and then serving them at a restaurant or a diner in their city in the evening time. Not to mention the millions upon millions of Americans whose credit scores just took a gut punch because all of a sudden, their student loans are due after years of them being on pause because of the pandemic. And that's because Republican attorney generals from all across the country decided to get together and say, oh, no, we're not going to forgive $10,000 in student loan. We're not going to give anything to anybody. We'll let them work hard and pay their bills off. And with all of this, the answer from politicians and state houses across the country, and Republicans especially in control of Washington, these folks are orchestrating this madhouse. This is the circus that has become American politics, folks. This is where we are. And I could go on and on and on because on nearly every issue, people are getting screwed, plain and simple. So why is that? With all this talk, why are the results just not there? The answer is simple. I believe that the real solutions get blocked by powerful special interests that profit from the status quo. They want things to stay exactly like it is. They don't want any change unless that change benefits them. Especially now that we have in power a president who is easily flattered by just a little bit of ass kissing by those who are willing to pucker up. Mwah! Mr. President, I'll kiss it away. And the current administration is capitalizing on this idea that they are finally doing something different. And they're disguising an even more sinister scheme to drain resources from the American people with a play on the emotions of the very American people that they're promising stuff to it. And they're promising to doge their way through this make-believe golden era. This is the golden era. We're going to build a golden dome and Doge is going to help us doge our way through it so we can have a golden era for everybody. And you don't have to take my word for it. They're saying it out loud. The president has signed more than 100 executive orders trying to bypass Congress and evade the Constitution. And the party in power, they're running scared. I mean, the branch of government designed to be a check on unfettered power and to have oversight is literally afraid of the president. They are afraid of a 78-year-old man. They're afraid of Donald Trump. They're afraid of him, plain and simple. And I'm not making this up. This isn't some conspiracy theory that I pulled out the air. Take a listen to this.
We are all afraid. Okay? It's quite a statement. But we are, we're in a time and a place where I don't know, I certainly have not been here before. And I'll tell you, I'm oftentimes very anxious myself about using my voice, because retaliation is real.
That's an actual sitting U.S. Senator talking about how politicians are afraid of the mega retaliation that comes from standing up for the American people. So who cares that politicians are being politicians? You might ask, Hendrell, why does any of this matter? Well, it matters now more than ever because there is frankly some unrecognizable shit happening in American politics. I mean, that's as clear as I can put it. Some people are saying, great, Trump is shaking things up and being unconventional. He's different. He's a businessman. He's big and strong. But other people are saying, maybe he's a declining madman who sold his soul to Elon Musk, and now the two are taking a wrecking ball to domestic and foreign policy. Maybe they're ruining the American way of life. Listen, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I don't really care about any of the policies that he's pushing because they do not benefit the vast majority of Americans. I'm not out here championing anything that Donald Trump is putting forward. But I do love this country. I do love this nation. So it matters because we see how dangerous the current administration is and how complacent a Republican-controlled Congress is and how embedded some conservative judges are in fundamentally transforming the America that we know. And in my opinion, they're not transforming it in a good way. If we don't keep saying it, people will never understand that the system isn't failing by accident. Real solutions are being blocked by powerful interests who profit from the status quo and by a president who has absolutely no intention of following the rule of law. So with all of that, the question is, who is really running the country? Is it the president? Is it Congress? Is it the courts? Or do you believe that the real power brokers aren't sitting in Washington, of course, with the exception of Elon Musk, of course. But do you think that they are sitting in boardrooms? That they're billionaires and corporate executives who fund campaigns and shape policy, who write the legislation before it ever reaches a politician's desk? Does the real power lie in the hands of a few who we could easily call an oligarchy? Or the folks who run Washington think tanks? Or is it still a government for and by the people? What do you think? Is it still a government for and by the people? Are we still in control? For the last few years, Republicans have been talking about, council culture this and council culture that, and now they're in power. And my friends, they are counseling every damn thing that you could imagine. They're counseling contracts. They're counseling grants. They're counseling DEI. They're counseling veteran jobs. They're counseling strategic foreign relationships. They're counseling the Department of Education. They're counseling environmental protections. They're counseling foreign aid. But what they're not counseling is the out of control cost for everything we buy. The price of eggs is ridiculous. But have you looked at the cost of a bag of potato chips or a 6-pack of beer? They're not counseling student debt. They're not counseling poverty. They're not counseling low wages. They're not counseling gas prices. They're not counseling this high-ass rent that people are paying. You can't make this up. This level of hypocrisy is almost numbing. But on the other hand, we've got to ask, what are the Democrats doing? How are the Democrats fighting back? How are the Democrats making the case against this? How are the Democrats showing the American people that they have something different to offer? Hell, we're still living in 2024, still fawning over whether Biden should have gotten out of the race earlier or what we didn't know about his health. Here's the hard truth. We lost. It's time to fucking move on. We know that the Biden-Harris administration was one of the most consequential and historical presidential administrations in modern history. Democrats need to be focused on how do we get back there. It's time to let the former president enjoy retirement. It's time to stop looking for a scapegoat and start offering up the next best leader to carry the Democratic torch forward. It's like we're living in a national fight or flight simulation. Right now, our response to these new perceived threats of political danger is telling us that we can either fight back or we can run and hide and try to escape by waiting it out. Unfortunately, folks, escaping is impossible because everything in our lives is influenced or impacted by politics, by these crazy politics that we're living through right now, by these uncertain times that we're living through right now. That's why the first order of business for Donald Trump and Elon Musk has been to try to, the oldest divisive tactic possible, make us feel like people who don't look like us are getting more than us or taking something from us. Hence why DEI was the first priority for them before anything else. All made possible by the United States Supreme Court. And you don't have to take my word for it. If you like him or not, take the president's word for it. Here he is just a few months ago. Listen to this.
We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all across the entire federal government and indeed the private sector and our military. And our country will be woke no longer. We believe that whether you are a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, or an air traffic controller, you should be hired and promoted based on skill and competence, not race or gender. Very important. You should be hired based on merit. And the Supreme Court, in a brave and very powerful decision, has allowed us to do so. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's talk about something that should have every American, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, angry. It should have you angry. Because what's happening right now isn't just politics as usual. It's a full-scale assault on our way of life. We're seeing the federal government, particularly the executive branch, showcase a dangerous new level of power that no president should have. Not a Democrat nor a Republican. Not a Democrat nor a Republican. For years, we've been told that America is the land of opportunity. This is the land of opportunity for everyone. That if you work hard, play by the rules, and get your education, then you can make it. But what happens when those in power start rigging the game against you? What happens when politicians, especially the ones who are bought and paid for by special interests, start rolling back policies that were meant to level the playing field? What happens? That's exactly what's happening with nearly every executive order the president has signed, and with every bill that Congress is championing right now. They're ready to roll everything back. They're ready to shuffle it up. They're ready to say that, no, this is not a level playing field. We just said it was one. And make no mistake, these attacks aren't about fairness. They're about power and making sure that the wrong kind of people don't get too much of it. They don't want you to have power. They don't want your wife or your husband or your child to have power. They want all the power. So when it gutted affirmative action, the Supreme Court made one thing very clear. Privilege is alive and well. And I'm not talking about white privilege. I'm talking about the privilege held by a handful of wealthy Americans. Suddenly, we live in a nation that's all about merit. Well, if it's about merit, then why are we removing exhibits from the National Museum of African American History? If it's about merit, why are we removing photos of Jackie Robinson and mentions of the Tuskegee Airmen from the Department of Defense website? Talk about merit. I mean, these folks, they were the epitome of merit. But the real question is, who's behind the push? Who worked for decades to make this possible? I'll tell you who. It's politicians who are beholden to conservative think tanks and dark money groups that have been working behind the scenes to make sure this country stays in the hands of the elite. It's the architects of Project 2025. That's who. These are the same politicians who will get on stage and tell you, pull yourself up by your bootstraps so that you can make something of yourself, while they cut every program meant to help disadvantaged citizens get ahead. And they haven't just infiltrated the halls of Congress and legislative chambers and state houses across the country. They've even compromised the Supreme Court. It's clear that the highest court in the land is no longer just interpreting laws, it's actively reshaping the country to benefit a few. So if you're out there jumping for joy because, you hear something like the president has immunity or that the executive branch has unlimited power or that DEI is dead, just remember that their next decision just might have an irreversible impact on you or someone you love or someone you know or someone you used to know. But hopefully I'm wrong. Maybe, they'll snap out of it. But we'll save that for another episode because I'm certain that they are on course, indeed on course, with every one of these executive orders that's challenging the Constitution. They are on course to rewrite the Constitution for President Trump and his billionaire friends who are essentially in charge of Congress. That brings me to my next point. Who's really in charge? Because it's clearly not just elected officials. If you've been listening to the folks in Congress and in state houses across the country, you can easily tell that they are clueless at best, but clearly compromised by the hypocrisy of their reckless actions as a show of loyalty to their parties. The truth is, it's the billionaires funding their campaigns. Dark money, super PACs, and corporate lobbying that's really controlling what policies are prioritized. It's the willingness of those same billionaires to kneel and kiss the ring to ensure that their agendas are the top priorities as they sit atop the Statue of Liberty, almost like they're America's billionaire overlords. And I'm not just talking about any billionaires. I'm talking about the real-life Lex Luthors of our time, the ones who we've seen step up and say that they want it all at any cost to the American people. They're not willing to compromise. Guys like Elon Musk and their billionaire buddies who have more influence over U.S. policy than most elected officials do. Think about, tech oligarch number one, Elon Musk. The man bought Twitter. Literally bought Twitter. X. Not just because he wanted to champion free speech, as he claimed, but because he wanted control over the national discourse, because he wanted attention, but most importantly, because he craves power. Hence why he wants to be the king of Mars. I say, let's paint him red and put him in a rocket ship and send him on his way. This is a guy who openly meets with politicians, influences defense contracts, and shifts policy discussions by tweeting in the middle of the night. We've seen that before. And we've heard of copycats. But what he's done is that he's actually gone out there and stolen the whole Trump persona. He's like Trump 2.0. He's like the mini-me. He's dictating space policy with SpaceX, energy policy with Tesla, and even labor laws by illegally blocking his workers from unionizing. And right here in Memphis, where we're recording this podcast, XAI is locked in a bitter environmental fight with the community. He's been given historic control of reshaping our government and the American way of life. At the same time that he's supposedly cutting waste, he's constantly recommending ways that his companies can profit from the changes. But now that he's losing money and his personal brand has been somewhat, tarnished, he's ready to all of a sudden pump the brakes. He's ready to stop giving money to politics and start back building rockets and robots. The only thing that he has doged, it seems, is himself. So what's next? Will we When he leaves town, will we privatize and outsource the post office to Amazon? I mean, what's really next? It's truly a weird time in America. The president we have a president who literally wanted to surround himself with billionaires. He wanted folks just like he claimed to be a billionaire. He wanted folks just like him around him. He's appointed what I believe is 16 of them to his administration. The power these guys wield isn't just financial. It's policy influence at the highest level. And that's important because corporations are writing laws before they ever reach Congress. Most Americans think Congress debates laws and then votes on them. That's cute. Maybe once upon a time, but now it's the complete opposite. There's no debate. There's barely any input. A small group of congressional leaders supposedly create the legislation, and then everyone else just falls in line. They don't even read the damn bills anymore. The truth is, many laws are written by corporations and their lobbyists before lawmakers and their staff even see them. And that should scare all of us. Let me ask you, you ever heard of ALEC? It's the American Legislative Exchange Council. ALEC is a powerful group where corporate executives sit down with Republican lawmakers and literally draft bills together. The next thing you know, that bill shows up in your state legislature or in Congress, word for word. Ever wonder why states started pushing identical voter suppression laws at the same time? Or all of a sudden started focusing on cultural issues? That's ALEC at work. Corporate influence in real time. And it's not just the right wing. Big Pharma, Wall Street, Big Tech, all of them have had their hands in Democratic politics too. Ever wonder why Democrats campaign on lowering drug prices? But then nothing ever really changes? Because lobbyists write the fine print to ensure loopholes protect their profits. And to his credit, one person tried. One person tried to change that by lowering the cost of insulin and forcing Big Pharma to negotiate drug prices with the federal government. And we all know how his presidency ended. He's back in Delaware right now, fully retired and recovering from a recent health discovery. Here's something to ask yourself. Why are both parties afraid to challenge billionaire power? Why are politicians not stopping it? Ask yourself that. Why aren't they simply not stopping it? They have the power to do it. Maybe because both parties, both with a capital B, depend on billionaire money to fund campaigns. That's the cold hard truth. Republicans, they're straight up bought by billionaires like the Koch brothers who fund their entire party infrastructure. They'll never go against corporate interests because their paychecks depend on it. Democrats, well, we talk a big game, but let's be honest, we aren't completely clean either. Wall Street, big tech, our friends in Hollywood, and for a while, even the folks in Silicon Valley, they all have owned a piece of the Democratic Party too. Let me ask you this. If we're serious about taking on billionaires, why don't we have a real crackdown on monopolies? Why aren't we passing laws to increase the minimum wage? Why are we not increasing taxes on the richest Americans who already pay the lowest tax rates? I'm not the smartest man on earth, but I was inside of the machine long enough to know that in the world of politics, money talks and bullshit walks. Speaking of money, let's end this episode talking about who's really getting crushed in this country. Because right now, Congress is promising a big, beautiful bill. Promising to pass Trump's big, beautiful bill. But remember that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If you depend on Medicaid or Social Security, if you're disabled and depend on food stamps, then this bill definitely is not beautiful for you. It's a nightmare. Let's talk about who the tariffs will impact the most. Let's talk about who loses when billionaires get more tax cuts. Let's talk about something that both parties don't want to admit because at the end of the day, they both benefit from it. America is at war And I'm not talking about a war with terrorists. I'm talking about a war with poor people. From poor whites in the Appalachia to poor blacks in the Mississippi Delta. And no, I'm not talking about the war on poverty that politicians like to throw around in speeches as if they are closing the economic divide. I'm talking about the war on poor and working class Americans that's been happening for decades, especially under Republican control. Because here's a dirty little secret. Keeping people poor isn't just an unfortunate side effect of bad policy. It's a deliberate strategy to maintain power. Think about it. The cost of living is skyrocketing, but wages, they're stagnant. Healthcare is unaffordable, but the insurance companies are raking in record profits. Student debt is crushing an entire generation, but politicians can't seem to find the money to fix it. Meanwhile, they hand out tax breaks to billionaires like candy on Halloween every day of the year. But wait, there's more. It gets worse. Being poor in America isn't just hard, it's expensive. Payday loans and predatory lending is legalized loan sharking that preys on people just trying to survive. Sky-high bank fees and penalties for people living paycheck to paycheck, that's what you get. Grocery prices are through the roof while corporate profits keep soaring. The cost of rent in almost every city across the country is out of control, but somehow there's always money for luxury real estate developments. And you know what? When people start struggling, instead of helping, the government criminalizes being poor. Can't afford your rent? They'll evict you. Can't pay off that medical debt? They'll ruin your credit. Fall behind on child support? They'll take your license, so now you can't even work. Need government assistance? They'll drug test you, they'll shame you, and then they'll make you jump through hoops just for crumbs. Meanwhile, America's billionaires are exempt from these issues. They don't have to worry about any of that. They receive bailouts, they receive tax cuts, they receive policies that are designed specifically to safeguard their wealth. Right now, Congress is debating a bill that gives the rich permanent tax cuts while the poor and middle class gets a temporary break. They want you to believe that they're giving everybody a cut, but yours is temporary, while the richest folks in this country, their cut is permanent. On top of that, you're going to be losing access to critical programs like Medicaid and SNAP. And it's no accident. All of these things, every one of these things, it's by design. And honestly, I'm starting to believe that it's a myth that, Republicans hate the poor and Democrats help them. Let's clear something up right now. People love to paint this as a Republican versus Democrat issue, where one side is fighting for the poor and the other is against them. That's a lie. This is a case of the haves and the have-nots. Republicans, they're openly hostile to poor people. They call them lazy, they cut food stamps, they gut unemployment benefits, they push policies that make it harder to survive. Point blank, period. But Democrats, we have to do better as well, because we claim to fight for the poor. But when we're in power, what happens? Minimum wage is still stuck at $7.25 an hour in some places. Universal health care, it has never gotten passed. Student loan forgiveness, watered down to almost nothing. And then affordable housing. I don't even want to mention affordable housing because we're still waiting year after year. And then we wonder why we have a working class problem. Campaign after campaign after campaign, we scream about raising wages, fixing healthcare, and student debt relief. But when we have the opportunity to implement solutions, suddenly the problem is too complex. Folks like former Senators Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, they derailed the efforts and are still embraced. Why? Because, we're a big tent. Let's just bring them back and give them a big old hug anyway. But at the core, both parties have donors who profit from keeping wages low, keeping debt high, and keeping working people desperate. My friends, that is it. Let's be real. If Democrats put their differences aside, put the purity test aside and just focus on passing the legislation that we know America needs, then we would still be in power and America wouldn't have this current mess we know as President Trump or the Trump administration. Because one thing is for sure, we know the Republicans won't pass the legislation. They won't even consider it. They're in charge right now, and guess who has been thrown in the trunk while the billionaires get the front seat? They get the right shotgun. The reality is, the poor keeps getting poor in this country, and the rich keeps winning. This is how the game works. You know, they make survival expensive, healthcare, housing, food, transportation. Make sure people can barely make ends meet. They keep wages low so people are forced to work longer hours to survive. They drown them in debt, student loans, credit cards, medical bills. And they do that so they're too busy struggling to fight back. And then when you do fight back, they call you lazy, they call you ungrateful, and they tell you to work harder, work a little bit harder. Folks, it's not just an economic system. We are living through what I believe is a control mechanism. Because when people are broke, when people are exhausted, they don't have the time or energy to challenge the system. And that's exactly what some politicians are counting on. That's what they're counting on. But here's the bottom line. Power is never willingly given. It's taken. And right now, the people who have it are doing everything in their power to make sure that you don't. They distract you with culture wars, divide you with fear, and they lie straight to your face while they rig the system behind your back. If you're tired of the hypocrisy, if you are tired of the lies and the empty promises, then you're in the right place. You're listening to the right podcast because I'm going to keep it unfiltered every week. Next week, we're diving into immigration. Immigration has been a hot button issue in this country. So we're diving into immigration and foreign policy. And I promise you this, the people at the top do not want you to hear that conversation. They don't want you to hear what I have to say about immigration and foreign policy. The truth about immigration isn't what they're selling you. It's something far more sinister. I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on social media at Hendrell Remus. And let's keep this conversation unfiltered. Make sure that you subscribe and share this episode and tell like-minded folks or people who you believe need to hear politics through a new lens to tune in to this podcast. Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, and never stop asking the hard questions. This is Politics Unfiltered, and I'm out.